Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Neale Donald Walsh, author of the God series and God Times, I should say, author of the Conversation with God series. And today we're going to be focusing on his new book, God Talk. And I'm so excited for this guest. Oh my goodness. And I hope you guys will too. Stick around to the end because God has something that he wants to share with you. And Neale is his vessel. Welcome, Neale.
Well, we all are God's vessels. Let me be real clear about that, Myrna, because I don't want people to think that I think that I'm the one that God is speaking to, so that God's message can get to the world. I'm no special, no more special, I should say, and no more different from anybody else. So all of us are God's vessels to bring God's message to the world. And that, frankly, is my most important message. And what's stopping humanity from being the species that we could be is that we are not really holding that as our truth. Through the years, we've been thinking, no, it's this one person, or it's that single person, or it's this guru, or it's that master, or it's this pope, or it's that, ulama, or whoever we think it is. And the truth is that all of us, every single human being, has been given the opportunity, the gift, the treasure of direct connection with the divine, and the ability to bring through the messages of the divine through our own words and actions every day. I'm sorry, I don't mean to start off with a lecture, but I just don't want people to think that I imagine that I'm the guy that God is talking to.
Well, to prepare for this interview, I went and I reread your first book, Conversations with God, book 1. And in there is a conversation when you asked God a question. And if you being special, and he says, no, you're a vessel, and he's using you as a vessel. So that's basically where I got that from. But I know that in your God talks, you are showing that we all can talk to God, and that's basically
not only that, Myrna, but even in book 1, the book you just mentioned, in the first 15 pages of book 1. Of course, all of the Conversations with God books, all 9 of them, amount to 3,000 pages of dialogue. But in the first 15 pages of those 3,000 pages, God said directly, because I asked God, why me? Why did you choose me? And God said, Neale, sweetheart, I talk to everyone all the time.
That's true.
The question is not to whom am I talking? The question is, who's listening?
Yes, that is true. That is true. Right. Okay. Awesome. All right. We're getting off to a rocking start. But listen, guys, if you don't know who Neale Donald Walsh is,
if you don't know who Neale Donald Walsh is, okay, I'm out of here. I'm out. Goodbye. It's been fun being with you. Have a good time.
Well, no, there's some people.
See, she believed me. She loves my humor. She actually believes that I would leave in the middle.
This guy is humorous. We haven't even started yet, and he's got me shocked. Did he really leave? I know who you are. I've been wanting to talk to you for ages, but you never know. Someone might not know who you are. So let me introduce you properly. Okay, so Neale Donald Walsh has written 40 books on contemporary spirituality and its practical application in everyday life, including his new book, God Talk, Experiences of Humanity's Connection with a Higher Power, a book in the Common Senscience book series. Neale is the best-selling author, as we were talking, of the Conversation with God series, which 7 out of the 9 books became a New York Times bestseller. Book 1 the book I was just talking about, remained on that list for 134 weeks. His title has been translated into 37 languages and have been read by millions of people around the world. Visit Neale's website, neildonaldwalsh.com, to pick up your copy. So Neale, even though we've already started, let's dive right in. Now, in your book, God Talks, you start off by saying that nothing comes to us unless we attract it. And I totally agree, because I have attracted this interview. I had reached out to your publicist several times before to try to talk to you after I read Conversation with God, book 1. Nothing ever happened. And all of a sudden, I didn't have to do anything. It just came to me. So I am sure that I attracted this interview. But let's start from the beginning. Why do you think you attracted God using you as a voice to share his message to the world? Can you take our listeners back to that first moment? You know, you were angry. So let's start there.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I would agree exactly with the words that I attracted God's messages. Again, I want to say all of us are receiving God's messages all the time. What I attracted, what I brought to myself was an awareness of the fact that God is talking to all of us all the time. And what brought me to that awareness, Myrna, was that I had reached a terrible place in my life. I mean, honestly, nothing was going the way I had hoped it would go. My relationship with my significant other had broken down, regretfully. And so my marriage was ending. It wasn't, an angry ending. We had a sweet departure, but we both agreed that our relationship simply wasn't working. So we agreed on an agreeable, separation. But then 5 days later, I was laid off from my job. I lost my job because the corporation that I worked for needed to downsize, and I was the most recent hire. So last person in, first person out, I had no seniority. So now I lost my relationship and my job in the same 5-day period. But that wasn't enough. Life said, Neale, how about a triple whammy? So as I'm driving to a job interview for a position I knew I would be hired for because I had all the right qualifications, and they were looking for someone with all the credentials that I had. I never got to the interview, Myrna. A gentleman, an older man, turned in front of my car. He made a left turn in front of my car as I'm driving down the street and smashed right into me. And it wasn't a fender bender. He totaled my car, turned right into the driver's side of my car. And we had a major, major automobile accident. And I broke my neck in the car accident. And they rushed me to the hospital. And when I awoke from my injury, of course, naturally they put me under a painkiller right away. But when I awoke, the doctor said, Mr. Walsh, you had a major, major break in your neck. It wasn't a hairline fracture. You had a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7 cervical vertebrae posteriorly. In other words, a break in your neck big enough to put a pencil through.
Wow.
He said, Mr. Walsh, most people who suffer that kind of a break in their neck die because of spinal cord complications.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's the next thing he said. He said, and if they don't die, the 1 or 2% that don't die wind up being paralyzed from the neck down.
Yeah.
He said, you suffered neither consequence. Then he leaned over the table that I was lying on and he said, what do you intend to do with the rest of your life? Because you've been given
a second chance.
A great gift. He said, I don't see very many people walking in here with that kind of an injury who get up off the table and walk right out. He said, so I hope you'll contemplate what you want to do with the rest of your life. Well, I thought, okay, fair enough. So when I recovered from my injury, they gave me a collar that I had to wear. It's called a Philadelphia collar. It's a plastic collar that you wear to keep your head up. And the doctor said, you will not take this off at least for a year, maybe a year and a half, because right now you have nothing to hold your head up. It's like, imagine a basketball in the head of a pin. There's nothing holding your head up. Your neck will not support your head. So do not take this collar off for any reason, not to sleep, not to shower. I don't care if you're making love, keep the collar on. I said, okay, I get it. But I couldn't get a job, Myrna. Nobody would hire me. I went from one interview to the next. And finally, somewhere around the seventh or eighth interview, by the way, I'm sorry to make such a long story out of this, but you asked me.
That's all right. I want to hear the beginning. Yes.
Yeah. So I couldn't get a job. And finally, the seventh guy or so interviewing me said, Mr. Walsh, no one's going to hire you while you're wearing a Philadelphia collar, while you're wearing a therapeutic device around your neck. He said, we're all clear that one wrong move on the job, and we're paying your hospital bills for the next 4 years. We can't afford to hire you. He said, come back here when you have that therapeutic device off of your neck, and we'd hire you in a minute. You got all the qualifications we need. So I couldn't find a job. Finally, the landlord at the little apartment that I had rented when I left my wife said, I can't carry you anymore because I couldn't make the rent anymore. I had run out of my savings. I had no income. So he evicted me, and I had nowhere to go. I wound up living on the street, not for a couple of tough weeks or a month or two, but for an entire year of my life.
Wow.
I lived
That's the part I remember.
I lived as a street person for 2 weeks shy of 1 year, sleeping on the ground, pounding the pavement, holding my hand out from people, asking them if they could possibly give me anything, a couple of quarters, a $50, anything would help. And, we see these homeless people all the time, and they have a cardboard sign often that actually says that. They say, anything helps. And they're not kidding. One man said to me, I'm sorry, all I have is just some pocket change right now. And I said, you know what? If you gave me a quarter, if I got a quarter from everybody I asked today, I might be able to have a hamburger by the end of the day. Please give me whatever you have. And he gave me a couple of quarters. That's what I've realized, what it was like to live without any dignity at all, where you're depending on the largest of people, depending on the generosity of people to help you buy a hamburger or a bag of French fries. And if you really want to talk about loss of dignity, where does a homeless person use the bathroom? There's no place to relieve yourself. You have to try to sneak into restaurants, hoping the manager doesn't see you because you look pretty bad, you smell pretty bad. It's pretty obvious you're a street person. So they're going to come up to you, which they did to me many times. Please, no, not here, not here. Please don't make me call the police. And they ask you to leave the restaurant. Hopefully you can sneak into the restroom before they catch you, and you can at least have a place to relieve yourself. Talk about losing your human dignity. No place to even go to the bathroom. Finally, Myrna, after a year of this, I got a little weekend job, filling in for somebody on Saturdays and Sundays. And I'm making just barely enough money to afford a little one-room apartment on top of somebody's garage. They had put a little one-room, they threw a couple of pieces of used furniture in there, a couch and a chair and a bed. And that's where I stayed. It cost me, I think, like $90 a month. In those days, it was more money than it is today. But
yeah.
So there I was. But at least it had a bathroom. They put plumbing in, and a bed.
Yes.
And that's all I really wanted was a bathroom and a bed. I was out of the weather, out of the rain. I didn't have to sleep in the rain. No more sleeping in the rain, in the cold. But then I woke up
You're breaking my heart.
Well, it's a true story, and I lived through it.
I know it's a true story, and it's yes.
And so,
But
and I wasn't even a young man. You know, it would have been something if I was 19 or 25 or even 35. But I was 50 years old when this was happening to me. I was 52 years old. So I
really,
wasn't a young guy. And I thought, so it's come to this. So it's come to this with all of my talent and my incredible good looks, with all of my brains and all of my gifts. This is what it's come down to. I'm living in a one-room studio over somebody's garage. So I woke up one morning at 4:30 in the morning, very angry. I couldn't sleep. And I picked up a yellow legal pad that I had on the coffee table in front of the used couch. And I started writing a very angry letter to God. I didn't know how else to deal with my anger. So I just was writing, Dear God, what does it take to make life work? And what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? And I can remember my third question. I wrote down on the legal pad, tell me the rules. I'll play. I promise I'll play this stupid game. Just tell me how the rules work, because I don't understand the rules. I thought I was doing things halfway decently. I didn't steal any money from anybody. I didn't take anybody's wife. I didn't ruin anybody's reputation. I was a nice person. What does it take to make life work? And I was sitting there in my anger. And then I heard a voice in my mind. At first, I thought there was actually somebody in the room. Of course, I turned around, there's nobody there. And then I thought, great, not only now I'm also losing my mind, but I heard this gentle voice saying to me, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? And I remember thinking, well, I am venting, you think. But if you've got answers, I'd sure as hell like to know what they are. And the voice said to me, you are sure as hell about a lot of things. But wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven?
Wow.
And I remember writing, what's that supposed to mean? And then I began receiving answers to every question I asked. And to questions I hadn't even think of asking, hadn't even thought of asking. But the questions began coming to me as I received answers, which brought up more questions and more answers and more questions and more answers. And Myrna, before I knew it, I was engaged in an on-paper dialogue, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And I had no idea where these answers were coming from, because they violated, or I should say at least contradicted, everything I'd ever been told since I was a child about life, about God, about everything. It was, so I didn't know where I was. At first I thought, my gosh, am I trafficking with the devil?
Wow.
I mean, who would say stuff like this? Like, for instance, just to give you an idea what I'm talking about, I was told in the very early part of that conversation, Neale, there's no such thing as right and wrong.
Yes, I love that.
And Neale,
Yes.
there's no such thing as the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Neale, nobody does anything against their will. Nobody does anything they don't want to do. They simply say they didn't want to do it, but they did it for reasons they had that they thought was sufficient justification to do whatever they felt they had to do. And many other statements like that. And I thought, gosh, can these ideas have any value? I mean, how can this be true? So I continued the conversation until I wound up with so many pages of handwritten notes. And then, to end my story finally, I was told in the conversation, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many people.
Yeah.
And Myrna, that's when I thought, now I got you. Now I got you. Because, that was not going to happen. I realized I was a man of the world. I wasn't a kid. I understood there's no publisher in the country going to publish a book by by a guy who claims he's talking to God. Come
God,
on,
right.
not
Yeah.
going to happen. So I thought, if it really did happen, then that would be proof that I'm really actually having the experience that I understood myself to be having. So I sent it off. I sent my notes off to a couple of publishers, not 20 or 30, but 2 or 3 publishers, just to see what would happen. Sure enough, my phone rang. And some guy says, we'd like to publish your book. I said, you're
Wow.
kidding me.
Wow. He opens doors. Yes. That
So
no
they
man
published the
can
book.
shut. Yes. Hmm.
The rest, as they say, is publishing history.
Yes. 40 now. Wow. Wow. After I read that book again for the second time, because I listened to it this time on Audible, and I retain more things, and it's in my air, and I'm walking, and I'm getting it before. But when you read pages, you miss a lot of things. But right after you talked about right and wrong, there was an issue I had with my sister, and I said to myself, "Hey, there's no right and wrong. It just is." And I remember using that application, and it's so true. Yes, nothing is right and wrong. And then I also love how
And
God says that we create.
but the other statement, apropos of what you just said, having an issue with your sister, we all have those differences of opinion with people we love. But I remember the most striking statement about that in the dialogue. God said to me, Neale, no one does anything inappropriate given their model of the world.
Yeah.
What you therefore want to change is their model of the world. And I said, well, how would I ever do that? And God said, by the model of the world that you demonstrate.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
That was just another way of saying what the guy told us 2,000 years ago. Do unto others as you would have it done unto you.
Yes. That's a great model. Yes, that's a great model. Now, before we move on, I also one of the most profound things that I got from that book is how God said how we create our life. We have sponsoring thought, and then we have words, and then we have action. And then he says that we should do the action first, and then the words, and I really, yes, I meditated on that and started practicing that. So that is great.
Yeah,
You want to circle back on that?
Well, I realized that I had the process of creation backward in my mind, that I needed to take action first and then move into the belief that would really support that action, and allow myself to know that everything was going to be all right, regardless of how it turned out. That I had to let go of my expectations, let go of my requirements, just let it be whatever was best for me. God said to me, Neale, I promise you this. All change is change for the better. Just trust life. But if you don't trust life and get in there and start doing it, your way, the way you think it should be, then you're going to mess up the whole flow of energy. And then life is going to be a mess, and you're going to blame it on me. So I learned to approach life needing nothing to be other than the way it is right now.
Yeah.
No expectation, no requirement, no demands. Just let it be the way it is, including, I might add, love itself.
Yeah, you wrote a book on that, I think, right? One of your
Yes.
40 books, is it on love?
It's called The God Solution,
Yeah.
in which I said that the solution to humanity's problem, all of our problems, our wars, our economic, challenges, our racial inequities, our religious struggles with each other, all of our human problems would be solved if we simply decided to redefine God, to create a new definition of the highest power. And I was offered a 2-word definition. We don't have to get into a lot of explanation or long paragraphs to describe God. God said, you can describe the divine power in 2 words. Pure love.
Pure love. Yeah.
Now, Myrna, when I say this in front of an audience, and I've made this statement in front of live lecture audiences before, somebody inevitably gets up in the back of the room and says, oh, Neale, I've been listening to you for the past 20 minutes for you to tell me that the great revelation from the guy who talks to God is that God is love. Everybody knows that God is love. Even religions that have differences of doctrine and dogma, they all agree that God is love. Nobody would disagree with that. That's the big revelation. And I have to say to my friend in the back of the room, whoa, that's not what I said. I didn't say that. Yes, you did. I heard you just say it. I said, no. I said God is
pure love.
God is pure love.
Yeah.
Now my friend in the back of the room will say, okay, what's the difference?
What is pure love? Yes.
Pure love is a kind of love that needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return.
Unconditional. Is that another word for it?
We can't even love the person on the pillow next to us that way.
No.
Much less can we imagine a God who loves us that way.
Yeah.
In fact, to declare that God needs and demands nothing of us in response is called by most of our religions blasphemy. To say that would be called heresy. People would call me an apostate, and they have called me that because they say I'm an instrument of the devil, because I'm declaring that God wants nothing from me in return for her love.
Yeah, I believe.
So that's a theologically revolutionary statement that runs counter to the teachings of the largest number of the world's 4,223 religions.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned the 10 commandments. Yes, you talk about that in there, but you know what? Let's let them get their book and read all about that, because yes, there's so many concepts in there that you explore, and it's pretty good. But what we want to talk about today is really how to talk with God. And I am a born again Christian, and I've been baptized by the Holy Spirit. And I do believe that the Holy Spirit guides me. And, I wake up with revelations. But I will never say that I have heard from God. Now, you also talk about when we pray, we are talking to God. But most of us are not getting the answers. We're not listening to him. And you mentioned a minute ago that when God started talking to you, you heard him like a voice. You had to look around. And when I read Dr. Martin Luther King's biography, he was saying he was sitting at a table and God talked to him. He heard his voice, whether it's in his head, whatever. So, but few people can really say that they've heard God talk back to them and they've heard the voice. So, and you mentioned earlier that you are not only God's vessel, but we are all God's vessels. So how do you talk to someone that's listening to hear from God? What do we need to do?
Oh, your picture froze there. You said, how do you talk to someone who's listening? And then I didn't get the rest of the sentence.
Okay. How do you talk to someone who's listening right now, like our audience?
Yes.
About how to hear from God. We all talk to him. How do we hear from him?
Okay. Yeah. Before I answer that question, I have to ask you a question. You're a born-again Christian, is that correct?
Correct.
Do people who do not believe in Christ go to hell? Is every Muslim on the planet going to hell? Is every Jew on the planet going to hell? Is every Hindu on the planet going to hell? Is every member of any other religion? Are they all going to? Because there are 4,000 religions on the face of the earth. By the way, I didn't make that number up. That's an actual number. You can
Yeah, I know.
Google
You're
it.
quoting statistics, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Now you're
if
putting me
you're a
in the spot
Muslim,
here.
so
You know,
it doesn't.
Christianity, hang on.
So
Christianity says that Jesus is the way, but
yeah.
I'm not going to say that everybody's going to hell. Sorry, no, I can't say that.
Oh, so Jesus is not the only way. There's more than one doorway.
I guess.
Well, I don't guess. I know.
Okay, so you tell me what you know. I don't know. If I'm a born again Christian and everybody says Jesus is the way, and if you don't go through Jesus, then you're going through hell. But hey, yeah, I just told you I haven't heard directly from God about anything. So I'm reading the Bible, but I do believe that God, if you're asking me what I do believe that God is the supreme being and he's God of everybody. So
Yeah.
So if you want to get an answer, that's my answer.
Well, yeah, I'm curious. It's important because when you're broadcasting to many, many, many people, which you are, it's
Right.
important that we send a message to all those people that doesn't make them feel, oh, I'm a Muslim, so I guess I'm not going to go to heaven. Oh, I'm a Jewish person, so I guess I'm not going to go to heaven. Oh, I'm a Buddhist, so I guess I'm not going to go to heaven because I'm listening to a born again Christian. And so that's why I asked you the question. Okay. So let's be real clear, ladies and gentlemen. God never says to any human soul, you can't come home because you didn't come through the right doorway. Okay. Now, to answer your question about how can people have their own conversation with God, I realized that, there's kind of a little step-by-step process that a person could follow. Step is a kind of a little 6-step. I didn't really design it that way, but it turned out when I began looking at my own experience. Okay, the first step is possibility. You have to admit that it's possible that God would talk back to you. Now, we don't disagree that God talks back to human beings. Then we have to go to step number 2, worthiness. Because most people who think there is a God at all, that isn't everybody. There are some people who are atheists who don't believe there is a higher power. But for those people who believe in God, most of those people believe that God does talk to human beings, but you have to be worthy. You got to be the Pope, or the Archbishop of Canterbury, or maybe the chief ulama, or the head rabbi, or somebody with some credential. Mm-hmm. Or Moses. Because everyone agrees that God talked to Moses. Nobody questions that. Even though Moses was not Christian, but God even talked to Moses and gave him presumably 10 commandments carved in stone. So everyone believes that God talked to Muhammad, bless his holy name. Everyone believes that God talked to and through Jesus. Everyone believes that, so whether you're a Hindu or whatever people pretty much believe, okay, God talks to human beings, but not to ordinary people like Myrna. No way in the world. To say nothing of this scandalous guy called Neale. So the second step is worthiness. Mm-hmm. We have to embrace the fact that we are worthy for God to be talking to us. We're worthy of that singular honor. Then step number 3 is willingness. We have to be willing to overcome the objections of our culture, because the human culture, by and large, says God doesn't talk directly to you. And religions will say, as I mentioned earlier, that you're a blasphemer, that you're an apostate, that you're committing heresy if you go around saying that God is talking directly to you. So we have to be willing to overcome the natural reluctance and the denial of our own civilization's culture. So step 3 is wakeful. I mean, is willingness. Step 4 is wakefulness. If we are willing to overcome the objection of our whole culture, then we have to be awake. Stay awake, because God is talking to you in 100 different ways across 1,000,000 moments in 100 lifetimes. God will speak to you not just in words in your mind, but visions, ideas, the lyrics of the next song you hear on the radio. Could be just exactly what you needed to hear in answer to a question you've been walking around with for 6 weeks. Or the words on the billboard as you drive around the corner on the highway. Or the chance utterance that you hear between a couple sitting in a coffee shop a couple of tables away. And you hear them saying something, my God, that's exactly what I was thinking about. So the point being that life will reveal life's great secrets to us through the process of life itself. And I call those moments conversations with God. So stay awake.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Step number 5, acceptance. Don't reject what you're hearing. Accept it for what it is. Don't reject it and saying things like, it's just a coincidence, or it's only my imagination. I actually did that. I said to God in my dialogue, how do I know this isn't just my imagination?
Yeah.
And God said,
I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, God said, what would be wrong with that? Do you think I would stop at nothing? Why would I not use your imagination? Where do you suppose Mozart's music came from? Where do you suppose Michelangelo's wonderful artistry came from? Where do you suppose all genius ideas come from? Your imagination. Hello, Neale. Hello. So just because it's your imagination doesn't mean that it's invalid.
Right. Okay.
And then finally, step 6, discrepancy. Discernment. Step 6 is discernment, to have the ability to tell the difference between messages from the divine and messages from another source. And to not decide that everything, I get it, everything is a sign. It's a sign. I reached into my pocket to pull my car keys out, and a dollar bill fell on the ground. So I realized it's a sign. I'm supposed to throw all my money on the ground. God showed me a sign. No.
That's a hard one to know. Yes, to know whether it's God or the devil or your imagination.
Well, there is no devil. First of all, there is no devil. Let's get real clear. I know you're a born-again Christian, so you probably think there is a devil. But ladies and gentlemen, there is no devil. We made it all up. There's no such thing as hell. We made it all up. There's no place that God sends souls that don't obey God, because God does not need us to obey her. She's perfectly okay with us simply moving through our life, engaging the process of our soul's evolution. And if we don't get it right the first time, we get to do it again and again and again through a process called reincarnation. But we're not sent to hell, because there is no such place as hell. By the way, this isn't just Donald Walsh talking about this one. Even the Pope John Paul II made that statement. He said, guys, there is no place of fire and brimstone. Hell is simply the experience of being without God in your awareness. That's pure hell. But the Pope said, there's no such place as fire and brimstone where you burn forever, for all eternity.
That makes sense. I remember God telling you that you had 600 and something lives before. Yeah. So obviously, and he says you're a bad person and some of them kill people. So yes, you should have been gone to hell. I would say you weren't.
Yeah, and not only that, but even with that many lifetimes, each lifetime relative to eternity, using proportional dynamics, a lifetime would be 30 seconds relative to eternity. It'd be like burning someone for 1,000 years for something they did wrong in the 30 seconds that they were here. So using proportional dynamics, That's what we call celestial justice. That's God's justice. You were really bad in lifetime number 46, and so you're going to spend eternity in hell. And you know what I was told as a Catholic? I was a Christian too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I was born into the Roman Catholic faith. You know what I was told in third grade as a Catholic, my friend Myrna? 9 years old. The priest came in to teach catechism to the classroom. And he's teaching us the difference between mortal sin and venial sin. Mortal sin being a serious offense against God. If you die with a mortal sin on your soul, which you haven't confessed and received forgiveness for, you go straight to hell. If it's a venial sin, kind of a spiritual misdemeanor, you would only go to purgatory. But you wouldn't go to hell. I raised my little 9-year-old hand. Father, what's purgatory like? And the priest said, well, purgatory is like hell, only it's not forever. You get to no, he was serious.
I never heard that one. Right.
Okay. Purgatory is a place you go where your sins are burned off of your soul, but if you don't have any mortal sins, you do get to finally go to heaven. So it's like hell, only it's not forever.
I remember seeing that. I don't remember seeing that in the Bible. Yes.
So purgatory is like hell, only it's not forever. I've had a couple of marriages like that. But that's a whole different story. So now the priest says, I said, well, can you, I said, Father, can you give me an example of a mortal sin? Now, this is not a joke. I'm not making fun of this. He said, quite seriously, he said, oh, sure. A mortal sin, children, is missing Mass on Sunday without a good excuse.
He was just trying to scare you.
No, he wasn't just trying. Check it out. Stop it, Myrna. Put information in front of your audience. Check it out. If you check out Roman Catholic theology, it won't say the priest was just trying to scare you. That happens to be Roman Catholic theology. Missing Mass on Sunday is a mortal sin.
Okay.
You go to hell if you don't have a good excuse. If you're caring for a sick parent, okay, fair enough. Or if you have to work, if you're an adult and you have to work to support your family, okay. But if you decide to just go play golf because your friend that you haven't seen in 8 years has come to town, and if you were to die on Monday because you missed Mass on Sunday, you die on Monday because you couldn't get to confession until Saturday, because most Catholic churches have confession once a week on Saturday afternoon. So you go straight to hell.
Okay. And I never heard that one either. Right. I'm not Catholic.
But isn't that like the third commandment? The second or third commandment? Keep the Lord's Day holy.
Yeah.
Yes, the third, second.
You go to hell if you miss church.
Yeah, that's right. But that's how they fill the pews.
Right.
The pews are filled with fear.
People that are guilty and fair.
And the priest was not kidding around. He was not just saying that to scare us. He was telling us, it's what the Roman Catholic Church teaches.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know what? I couldn't believe it when I was 50 years. I wanted to make sure I wasn't saying things that were not true. So a few years ago, I looked it up. And then I actually went to the archdiocese in my community where I live, and I asked, is it true that the Catholic Church teaches that missing Mass on Sunday without an excuse is a mortal sin? And the Archbishop's office said, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
So the priest wasn't saying that just to scare us. And don't you think that by the way, that would happen to be the very Sunday when I did miss Mass. I was an altar boy. I never missed Mass. But that Sunday was the Playground World Series of softball in our city. And my team said, Neale, you got to be there. You play right field for us. You got to be there for the game. So I thought, well, the game starts at 10 and church starts at 11. Maybe I can make it. But the game wasn't over. It went into extra innings. So I had to miss Mass. I thought, well, God understands. I couldn't go to confession until the following Saturday when the priest confess, he gives you absolution. He forgives you your sins and pronounces the penance you have to say. This is a sacrament of the Catholic Church. It's called confession. So I'm thinking all the way from Wednesday when the priest tells me this till Saturday afternoon. And every night I'm saying my prayer. I'm 9 years old, so I'm really taking this seriously. I'm saying my nighttime prayers. Please, God, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Don't send me to hell. Please don't send me to hell.
Wow. Yeah.
And so God said to me when I was 52, you don't have to pray the Lord your soul to take. Your soul has no other place to go. Even if you are the prodigal son, you are welcome back home in my arms because I love you without condition.
It's beautiful.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong about all of that. But I don't think so.
Wow. Wow. This is a great conversation. I'm getting some revelations that I missed from your book. All right. So let's get to God Talks. So God Talk is your 40th book. Tell us what's made God Talk special and different from your previous conversations with God books.
Well, because other than the 6-step process that I describe in great detail, how a person could possibly access their own experience of direct two-way interaction with the divine. In addition to that, the publisher decided to advertise on the internet. Please, if you feel that you have ever had a direct intervention from the divine in your life, send us your story. And they told me that they received hundreds of stories from people. They picked out the 6 or 7 best of those stories, one from a doctor, one from a scientist, one from a teacher, classroom teacher, and so forth, a housewife. And they put those stories in the book so people could see that it wasn't just this guy,
right?
Neale Donald Walsh, who thinks he's had a direct interaction with the divine. Here are some typical stories of other people, because they wanted the readers to see that this is very, very common for God to insert herself into our day-to-day lives. And then toward the end of the book, I open a new conversation, not just a conversation with God, but a conversation about God. And I talk to my readers about how we should have more conversations about
God,
about the divine. So what's most unusual about this book is how it came to pass. I didn't write the book and search for a publisher. Most books are written that way. Authors write a book and then they hope they can find a publisher. But in this case, my phone rang. And I picked up the phone and it was a publisher calling me.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, would you be interested in writing a book telling people how they could have the experience that you had? And I said, I never thought about it. I'd be happy to write. So that's how the book came into being. And that's what makes it different from the other books that I've written.
Yes, God Talks. I love that. Right. Yes. Okay. Yes, I'm friends with someone on Facebook that says one of her stories is in your book as well. So yes, so that was great. Now, yes, I had some questions here, but you answered them as we were talking. So yeah, the one question I have here is that God Talk is part of the Common Senscience, a mystical book series. Can you tell us why you decided to write a book in this series? I've interviewed a few of the authors. I interviewed Simran about signs, and I don't remember her name, but she talked about the Akashic records. And so I've had about 3 guests so far in the Common Sentience series. So what's so special about this series, and why did you want to include this book in the series?
I didn't want to include the book in the series. I knew nothing about it. My phone rang one day, and it was a publisher, and she asked me if I'd be willing to write a book about how people can have their own conversation with God. I said, sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the invitation. So I wrote the book and I sent it to her, and she read my manuscript and she said, we love it and we're going to publish it. So it wasn't a desire that welled up inside of me. Oh, I want to write a book as part of the Common Senscience series. I never heard of the Common Senscience series. So that's not how it happened. How it happened was my phone rang one day. I picked up the phone and it was the publisher asking me if I would write the book. So that's how it happened.
Okay. Yes. So yeah. So is there anything else you want to say about the Common Sentence book series and what they attempt to do? Because I know
what she has done.
all right. Okay.
What the publisher has done, she's talked to several other people who've had the experiences of what she calls common sentience. That is, that there is a field of consciousness that can be accessed, and we can actually interact at a conscious level with animals and with other elements of life. You can literally talk. I was just going to say that you can literally talk to a tree. As an example, and you can talk a tree into getting better, into getting well, if it's not producing the kind of fruit that it usually produces. So, I mean, this is the claim of people who believe that there is more going on here than meets the eye. Or as my friend Bill would say, I thought Bill put it really very well. Bill said, well, he didn't say it out loud, but he put it in one of his plays. He wrote a few plays, and he wrote the following line: there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. Wow. This world is, yes. So, wow. So that's amazing. All right. So, yes, one of the, I had some questions here, but as we talked, you answered them. So right now, let's talk about how listeners can get a copy of your 40 books. I know I mentioned your website earlier, but I mean, I'm pretty sure all your books are on Amazon. So, so tell our listeners, your social media handles and how they can reach you.
The fastest way to get a hold of me, because people, when you say NealeDonaldWalsh.com, they almost always misspell my name. Sure. Either they misspell the first name or they misspell the last name, because it's not spelled the way you would expect it to be spelled.
Right.
So I tell them, just go to my initials, ndwhome.com. ndwhome.com will get you to my, and that anybody can remember, ndwhome.com, and that will get you to my webpage where you'll find all the information you could possibly want to find. If you want to stay connected to the energy, I have a second website, cwgconnect.com. And at cwgconnect.com, there's a column, a platform that I visit 3 times a day. It's called Ask Neale. And on the Ask Neale platform, people can pose any question they want to ask me about anything having to do with the messages in the 9 dialogue books. And I'll respond to their question if they'd like to have some, little clarification or maybe an expansion of some of the messages contained in those 3,000 pages. So those are 2 places that people can reach me. Plus, of course, like everybody else in the world, I have a Facebook page, so they can also find me on Facebook.
What's your handle?
Neale Donald Walsh.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, yes. Well, there will be a transcript of our conversation on the show page, and I will link out to your site. So if anyone doesn't know to spell your name, then I will just link out to it. And I'll link out to as well the ndwhome.com. But for anyone that's listening, it's NealeDonaldWalsch. I should say if anyone is listening. If anyone wants to get the correct spelling, that's how it's spelled. And I will definitely link out to it.
Yeah, because
Neale
everybody wants to spell Walsh, Walsh, but my name is spelled Walsch,
yeah, yeah.
which is totally different. It's come more of a Slavic tone from my Polish background.
Mm, okay. Wow. Yes. Well, listen, your story, the beginning of how all this started is absolutely so phenomenal. And basically what it tells it, and then I mean, when people think of someone that's homeless, and a lot of times people dismiss that, but you've humanized it. And that's a great thing to bring to people's consciousness, the indignity of being homeless. And
Yeah,
a lot of people, yeah,
please excuse me for interrupting you. I beg your pardon, but I wanted to add, if you ever pass somebody who's homeless, often when we stop at, at the corner where the intersection, where the highway meets the, there's a guy standing there with a sign, or sometimes in the middle of a city street.
yeah,
You'll find people leaning up on the ground, leaning up against a building with a little basket in front of them. Guys, always carry a few dollar bills,
yeah,
maybe even a fiver, or maybe even a tenner that you feel you can let go of. Surprise the hell out of somebody. I mean, literally surprise the hell right out of them. Drop a 10 in the
yeah,
basket. It's not going to
yeah,
kill you.
yeah,
You won't
yeah,
even miss it. Before the end of the day, you won't even miss it.
yeah.
But you will
Well,
make
I
his
always I
day.
always carry cash for that very reason, that if somebody asks me and I said I don't have cash, I feel terrible. And a lot of people don't carry cash. And so it's very good for you to bring that to their consciousness. Yes.
Yeah, just a few pieces of paper and money
Yeah.
so that you have something to share.
Yes. Well, I definitely do that. And when you're talking about, a lot of people know, because they think that, or the homeless think that, people think that they're going to buy liquor with it. They ask for food. And I've gone to McDonald's where people are asking, can you just buy me a sandwich? And yeah, I definitely do. I never say no. Never say no. I
God
always
bless you.
believe
God
that,
bless you.
yes, that you should always give. All right. So, but yes, that story was awesome. And how you started talking to God, and now look where you are. I mean, it is a great story of where you start and where you end, because I'm pretty sure your life is so much different now. Not only are you one of God's vessels, not the only one, but one of God's vessels, but I'm pretty sure that it came with some abundance in there. So thank you so much.
There's also one last benefit. I get to talk to wonderful, gorgeous, special, sweet, caring, compassionate, sensitive, aware people like you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. You didn't disappoint. We started off laughing my head off. It's just, yes. So, yes, you do good work. And I'm so honored and so grateful that I get to talk to you, and you expanded my consciousness on a couple of things. And yes, I will definitely go. And your publicist sent me a PDF version of the book, but I will download it and listen to it um, on Audible, which is how I consume my books now. I retain more. And yes, and hopefully that I will have my own experience soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Myrna. It was lovely here to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for
So
the opportunity to be with you.
yes, so it's definitely my greatest pleasure and honor. So thank you. All right, guys. Now this was an incredible interview. I hope that you learned enough to tickle your curiosity about what's in Neale's books. If you haven't picked up a copy of the Conversation with God series, definitely go pick them up, and then you can finish up with God Talks. If you have read the Conversation with God series, then this is one where, like Neale says, God is talking to people like you and me. And once you go through the 6 steps, then you can have your conversation too. You might have questions, and God is there to answer. God is there to direct you. And if there's one thing we learned, is that there's no hell. God is pure love. And he loves you. So Neale, we all love you. We all love the work that you do. And thank you so much for bringing to our consciousness that we too can talk to God. As we wrap up, do you have a word from God or from you that you want to leave with our listeners?
The most important message I received in the 6th conversation books before the last 3, there were 9 altogether, but in the early books, I received a very important message. I said to God, what does it take to make life work? And she repeatedly said to me, Neale, your life is not about you. Your life has nothing to do with you. Your life is about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it.
Wow.
But when you understand that, Neale, then you will get in touch with the universe's largest truth. There's only one of us in the room.
One of us in the room. Huh. I didn't get that
All,
one. What does that
all
mean?
things are one thing. There's only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. That means you are one with everyone else. You think you're separate from everyone else, but the truth is that you and everyone whose life you touch are one. And it's even larger than that. You and God are one.
Yes,
You are
I
an
know that.
individuation of divinity. So, Neale, remember this always. There's only one of us in the room.
In the room.
We just look differently.
Yes.
Like the fingers on your hand, they're all individuated.
Mm-hmm.
They each have their own function and their own appearance, but they are in no way separated.
From my
But
hand.
rather, they are part of the same body.
Yes.
You, Neale, are fingers on the hands of God.
God. Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's
That
what
is
she
so
told me to
true.
tell everybody.
Yes. 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 And we receive it. Yes. Thank you, Neale. I'm so full. I'm so full. You imparted in me, and hopefully to the rest of the world that's listening. So thank you so much for being on the show. I will definitely run out and listen to God Talks and encourage myself and encourage my spirit. So guys, listen, thank you very much for tuning in to Transform Your Mind, to Transform Your Life. If this conversation didn't transform your mind, then I don't know what will. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Neale, for being on the show. If you're listening to this on iTunes, would love for you to rate and review. Go run out and pick up a copy of Neale's books, 1 or 2 or 3. And if you're watching this on YouTube, would love for you to subscribe. I love bringing you quality guests like Neale Donald Walsh. Neale, thanks again. And until next time, namaste.